Hello, welcome to the Hope and Inspiration Interview podcast series brought to you by Sollite Integrative Medicine for healing and conscious awakening. For more details about private sessions or training programs that Sollite Integrative Medicine offers, log on to www.sollite.com. That's Sollite. So this is Reverend Dr. Anthusa Helena. And I am so excited today to introduce our guest speaker for the Hope and Inspiration interview series. She's been a friend of mine, a colleague, a teacher of mine, a healer of mine. I'm just so inspired by everything she offers to everybody. And I have always gained wisdom and healing and perspective from my good friend, Debra Graugnard, who is a certified chaplain and has a Master's of Divinity in Spiritual Healing and Counseling, is the founder of Joyfully Living Wellness.com. And I'm going to let her take it over from here so she can introduce herself more and tell you more details, but also offer you some really special hope and inspiration message to you and gifts. Thank you, Debra, for offering this opportunity for us all today.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Anthusa. It is a pleasure to be here with you and your listeners today. I'm so grateful for what you're doing. Your series that you're producing, it sounds fabulous, and so far it looks fabulous. And I know you're just beginning with this series and what all that you are bringing to people. So thank you for doing that. Our world needs it. And I, know from my experience with you, I've interviewed Reverend Dr. Anthusa, if I can just call you Anthusa. I've interviewed Anthusa several times myself, and I interviewed her in a series that I did, and I have to say, without being too partial, her interview I think was one of the best interviews in the whole series. If you ever want to hear her talk about her stuff, I'll invite you to listen to that because she has so much to offer. So I'm glad that you are here with everything, all the wisdom and all the training and education and experience that you bring, as well as all of your life lessons and everything that you have acquired within your light being, if you will, and integrated into your light being during this earth journey. It's absolutely wonderful. So I thank you for that and for what you're doing and for getting your message and your gifts out there.
Thank you. That's nice. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I thought what would be really special to talk about today. Well, let me just say, maybe we can put that interview with you in the notes or something, because I don't have the link to it exactly. I wasn't planning to say that, but it just came out. It was such a great interview. But what I thought I'd talk to people about today is the inherent feminine shame. And I think, it's interesting because I was talking to a coach, a business coach about, wanting to speak more on this. And he was a man and said, I don't think anybody's going to know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
And so this was an indication. But then I started asking women, you know what I'm talking about when I say the inherent feminine shame? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Please talk more about that.
Right.
Yes. Women get it. Right?
Yes, yes.
Women get it. And, what is the inherent feminine shame? It is that shame that women carry. It's like we're born into when we're born in a female body. And there is an expectation of women. There is the double bind, the dichotomy of we will live into being the, excuse the expression, but the virgin or the whore, We are
Yeah.
either going to, I hope it's okay to say that, but it's like we're to be the, the prim and proper, and everything all ladylike, and we're also to be the seductress, and the sexy, and everything in our culture here in the United States, our culture, our media, everything portrays the feminine as the sex object,
Right.
right? And I mean, look at how feminine sexuality is used in the culture. It's used to sell, to persuade, and it is, honestly, it's exploited for profit. It's
Right.
exploited for power. And that, on the one hand, it's like, okay, enough already, stop. Because it's blasted in front of the face all the time that if you want to be popular, if you want to be loved, if you want to, to fit in, that you've got to be this sex symbol, this sex object. And that sets up one message. And then, for, you know, it, for those many of us who do, like, go out there and try to live into that, and I think of kids coming up. I think of myself as a child coming up and what I tried to live into. And then you're out there and you're putting yourself out there, and then, some harm comes to you as unwanted sexual advances,
Right.
or, sexual violation, trauma. And then all of a sudden, okay, it's your fault because you brought it on, because you were flaunting, and it's like, okay, so you better be straight, and you better, like, like, man up. Right.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
am I wrong on this? Can you relate to these messages?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's totally, for me, it's like losing who I really truly am from the get-go when I'm born, and then
Exactly.
having the environment and society and the culture, the lineage, the ancestry, and it's taken me all my life to really get to really who I am, as far as I know at this moment in time, presently,
Right.
and then really be the true, what I feel, sacred message, divine, feminine aspect of myself, because I spent the majority of my life, kind of reflecting what is being mirrored back to me. So I feel, to me, in my life, it's caused me, a slow process. I don't want to say harm, but we also met because we did a book together, on While We Were Silent, with several experts that had healed from sexual trauma. And maybe that would have never occurred. I'm not saying that it might not have, but I truly, definitely agree with what you're saying. So please go on. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. So, yeah, so it's like we're getting these mixed messages, okay? Oh, but now that you've lived into this expectation that's been put in front of your face for your entire life, and now this harm has come to you, well, that's your fault,
Right.
right? Because you should have been straight. You should have been covering yourself. You should have been protecting yourself. You shouldn't have been doing what this culture has told you all this time you're supposed to be doing, or looking how this culture has told you all this time you're supposed to look. And, so we get in this double bind, and then we hear the news, the media. You begin to believe there is a rapist on every corner, that, that you're in danger all the time, right? Because this is what our media is our news media is always highlighting, right? Because they thrive on drama,
Yes.
right? They thrive on sensationalism. They thrive. So it's like we get these messages, and we can become constricted in fear.
Definitely.
And, these messages, whether we are living into them or rebelling against them, that still is an indication they have power over us,
Oh, yes.
right? So
Yes.
even when you say, okay, well, I'm not going to listen to these messages, I'm going to be my own woman. I'm going to, it seems like our options in this culture, in this society, our options have been either to, like, fit into the man's world, to, do the corporate thing, or, the lead in a masculine way, or to like rebel. You look at the evolution of our feminine consciousness, right? There was once upon a time where there was a matriarchy and women were respected as they should be, and I'll talk about this in a minute.
Right, right.
And then there was, you know, I would say, because of the recognition of the power of the feminine and the feminine sensuality and the feminine sexuality, because of the extreme power of that was dominated and that was suppressed as the patriarchy came into power, and women were then, you know, I mentioned exploiting the sexual power, exploiting the power of feminine sexuality, right?
Right.
Women are then suppressed. Their power is exploited for dominance, control, and profit. And then you know, so we have this patriarchy, and then women say, okay, wait a minute, I don't want to be suppressed. I am not going to, you know, fit into this role that you've told me to. I am going to survive in the man's world.
Right.
So then we become like the men. And we're going to lead like the men. We're going to work like the men. We're going to, you know, do all these things like the men. And so then it's like, you know, there was that the feminist movement, right? And the women's liberation. And then from there, then came the sexual revolution, where I'm not going to be afraid of my body. I'm not going to be ashamed of my body anymore. I'm not going to be ashamed of my sexuality anymore. I'm going to be out there with that, right? And that was like, you know, when you think of like how the pendulum swings, right? The pendulum went from center to one extreme.
Right.
And then busting loose from that extreme all the way over to the other extreme. So we have the sexual revolution. And, you know, you look at, for example, the song, and I'll mention the song WAP. Have you heard that song?
I'm not sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not going to sing it.
Oh, okay.
It's actually, it's a very sexually explicit song that is a rap song that is, I believe it is two women saying, okay, all the men can do all this, you know, speak all the sexually explicit stuff about women. We're going to take our turn, right? I think they're attempting to reclaim power over the feminine sexuality, but what I believe is they are reclaiming the right to exploit the power of feminine sexuality, but they're still exploiting something that is sacred, and it's not really bringing truth to the power of the feminine.
Right.
So that's where I say the pendulum swings to the opposite side before it finally comes back to center. So what I'd like to talk about today is, you know, like all of this, what it sets up in us is this total like conflict, inner conflict, a lot of inner conflict.
Definitely.
Right?
Yes.
About what do I be? Because, you know, how can I be true to myself and feel safe in my body and feel secure and stand in my true essence and my power? And when we have all of our lives been told we're supposed to be this way, but that's not really true to yourself. You're supposed to be this way, but that's not really true to yourself. And you're getting like beat up on every turn for not being really true to yourself, right?
Right.
It does leave us with that inherent feminine shame. The shame of not being enough, or the shame of being too much, and the shame of the sensuality and the sexuality that is true, that is really true, the sacred power of the feminine.
Right.
And so therein lies the inherent feminine shame that, as you mentioned, ancestral, generational, it's been in existence for many generations, and it is carried through. We're born with it. It's in the DNA. and we're born into a culture that furthers it. And, here we are. So,
And the safety, I just want to point that out too, because not only the inner conflict and confusing messages, but when you look at it physiologically, with the nervous system, that creates the tension of being threatened and being in danger, and which just increases, when you don't feel safe, and then you're compounding it with you can't be who you really are, because you've got to survive. That natural
mhm,
instinct within us about survival, and then from there, um, I think shame is like the deepest core issue to even get to
mhm,
be able to totally heal yourself. So it's like layers of layers of layers of being covered upon to even be able to get to, hey, there's shame underneath it all.
right.
I diverted, sorry.
No, no, that's perfect, because the nature of shame is to hide. So it goes very deep. And
Okay.
it feels so icky. I mean, if you look, on every sensation, every feeling, every emotion, there is like the icky side of it, and then there's the positive side of it, right?
Hmm.
And so with the shame, it's ickiness. It wants to hide deep in. I mean, when you're ashamed, it's like, ooh, right? You just want to like curl up and hide and pretend you don't exist,
Yeah,
right?
that's it. You become so small, you have no life, you have no existence. Yes.
Right. And and there is a protective nature of that, right?
Hmm.
And if you want to look at the positive side of shame, the positive action of shame, it is protecting and preserving that which is sacred,
Okay.
right? And
Yeah.
so if we want to say, okay, all right, I sense this shame, not really my fault,
Yeah.
right? All of this stuff, it's not, take that in. It is not your fault.
That's
It
hard
is
to
not
get
your
to when
fault.
when it's been covered up for so long, to realize it's not your fault. I mean, that was very key. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
It is a message within your body that's saying there is something very sacred within you
Hmm.
for you to protect
Yeah.
and to preserve.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So take that in for a minute.
Really, everybody take that in right now for a moment. That's beautiful.
So let's just take a minute, because I want to talk about the truth of the feminine and the true nature of feminine, and how we can like begin to let go of all these pictures and step into that. But before we do, since I've just brought up all the ickiness around shame and all of the things that we
Yep.
have been conditioned to be ashamed of, let's just take a moment, if you will, and just like imagine all of that from your consciousness, and just let's just pull that out and put it in your hands, if you will, if you open to that, and just let's just call on the angels, and let's just ask the angels to please take that and release that. Take that from us and release it and let it go. And they, in their wisdom, know what to do with it and how to transmute it and how to cleanse and heal you. And just let that release from your consciousness, because it's all a bunch of fabricated nonsense that is not true to the nature of who you are. So just trust in their wisdom and let them release it from you. Let them take it from you. Take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, really let it go. And we'll just ask them to surround each of us with light, with the pure light of divine truth. And just let your being, all of those places that just release, let them fill with this light of divine truth, and return you to the truth of your essence, return you to your true nature as a being of light. And if there are men listening, you also have a feminine side, and let that be washed as well, and anything else that wants to wash, or I'll say whatever identity that you identify with, just let let the shame be washed. Let the any of those old societal pictures and expectations be cleared, and let that light come in and restore for you and return you to the true nature of who you are and what you are. And all right, now talk about the nature of the feminine. And I'll start with I want to start with the story of Adam and Eve, because I personally believe that the story of Adam and Eve are. I was raised Catholic in the United States of America, so this is the vantage point that I'm coming from. But the story that I grew up with is, I believe, a story that permeates the culture in this Western world. And it's actually, I mean, it's gone as far as a lot of our laws that were, written laws in this country, establishing this country, were founded on the interpretation of the Adam and Eve story, the Christian interpretation of the Adam and Eve story. And it's been very oppressive and suppressive to women, right? So the Adam and Eve story that I grew up with is that Adam and Eve met in the Garden of Eden, and they they were told they could eat of any of the fruits, but not of the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And they weren't supposed to eat from that fruit. But Eve was tempted by Satan in the form of a serpent, and she was offered the apple, and she took the apple and she ate from the apple what she wasn't supposed to eat. And then she tempted Adam, and Adam ate from the fruit that they weren't supposed to eat. And as a punishment, they saw that they were naked, and they doomed all of humankind to a life of sin. And therein lies the original sin that Christians will tell you we are born with, or at least Catholics will tell you we are born with original sin. And that, this is what we come in with, right? There's another factor in the inherent shame right there. So this whole story really sets up that trajectory we're on. It says that Eve, as a woman, was weak. She was tempted, and then she became a temptress and tempted Adam.
Right.
And because of her, women must now be subservient to men. Mm-hmm. We can't be trusted. And I've heard this from people too, though I didn't grow up with this, but someone else has told me this, that women suffer pain in childbirth because of the sin of Eve.
I've heard that.
Yep. And that this, because of what Eve did, it's all her fault. Mm-hmm. That we are in the state we're in, as separate from God, and God banned us all from the garden, and that we're all sinners.
Well, that's a heavy load to carry, but
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, and I remember when I was working in corporate, I don't know how we got into this discussion, but men talking about, that I was in a department of 80 people with only 3 women. And I got into this discussion with 2 men saying, oh, it's even in the Bible. Yeah, it's in the Bible that women have to do what the men say, and women have to, and I was just like wanting to kill them, right? Yeah. And but honestly, this is what we've lived with for years and years and years. But I offer a different interpretation of the story. Oh, okay. And it's one that honors the feminine. And it's really important to take this in, because I believe that our interpretation of that story is wrong.
Oh, of course.
It is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. It is wrong.
Yeah.
And the truth of the feminine, and I get this from my teacher, is, I studied with a Sufi master from Jerusalem for 20 years. And this story says that when Adam and Eve met in the Garden of Eden, Eve appeared as the tree of knowledge. She appeared as the tree of knowledge. And the woman, and get this, in our beings, we are the more subtle body. And being the more subtle body, we are more attuned to that connection with the all that is. We are more attuned. And we carry in ourselves, in the people born female who have a womb, we carry the womb. And there is great significance in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say more about that in a minute. Let me finish with the story and I'll get back to the womb. The womb, just say, being the bridge between the worlds. It is the bridge between the worlds, literally and energetically. So Eve appeared as the tree of knowledge. And when they took of the fruit, they took of it together. And taking of the fruit was in coming together in sexual intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And in coming together in that sexual intimacy, that is a way of coming into communion with Source when this is done in a sacred way.
Right.
Right. And this is a way that couples can come into communion with Source.
Right.
And this was fully intended that they would do this and come to this place of, it's like this was the marking, if you will, or the point of coming to this place of really integrating into physical body, into the 3D realm, because as a humanity, we agreed to come here to live out these soul journeys that we're all on, the heroine's journey, the hero's journey that, we talk about, where we come into physical form and we forget our connection with Source. We forget our divinity and we go on these earth trips and first forgetting who we are and identifying with the material realm and with our human senses, our eyes and ears and what we see and hear, and forgetting that subtleness and that connection, and going on this journey of forgetting, going through all the traumas that we do, separating from ourselves, and then feeling that spark of something that says, you know what, this is really messed up. This isn't right. There's got to be something better. And then that spurs us on that journey to return. And we return to know ourselves, right? And if you look at the archetype of feminine and masculine, the archetype of the feminine is that state of being that is the container of the all-encompassing container state of being. The masculine is the separating out and doing.
Yes.
Right. So we start as the feminine being, the all-knowing container of all of the, divinity, and then every human being. And then we move out via the masculine into the doing and the separating. And then we return to that feminine, the state of being. Right. So it sets up that whole outline for that journey. It gets us in touch with our bodies and our relationship to each other and our desire to procreate, our desire to eat and to attune to our bodies and the earth. All of these things are established in that story. They're all set up there. And that's what we have to do in order to go onto this earth journey. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's all outlined in that story. But what got lost in that story is the sacredness of the feminine. That state of being, that all encompassing, that tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the knowledge of, that encompasses, that is the state of being, the place we come to return and commune with Source.
Right.
Right. So I know I said I was going to talk about the womb, but I also recognize, how are we doing on time? Do we need to wrap up?
Yeah, you have a few minutes. I don't mind going a little over, but I do want to mention that a lot of yoga philosophies, because I've been trained in yoga for a third of my life and still continue. Mm-hmm. Several of the in Sufisms they're tariqas, but in yoga they're sects with sects. Mm-hmm. And I've studied a numerous amount of them, and they do go along with exactly what you said about the feminine sacredness and the returning to unity by communing both masculine and feminine. And I also just want to point out that not to kind of set off the masculine, but like you said, reinforce the male species has both the feminine and masculine within them too, and to reunite that. So yeah, I mean, if you can say something about the womb just briefly, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. All right. So the beauty of being in a female body, and I believe this is where an enormous power comes from with the feminine. You know, like we can we have a heart, and the heart, energetically speaking, is like a portal to connecting in with the divine truth and what is true for us and our core light and our inner strength and our connection with source. For women, we also have the womb, which, as I mentioned, is a bridge between the worlds, right? And the womb, so in the Sufi teachings, I'll say it from this perspective, the first emanation from a solo single God consciousness, right? A one unified source. The first emanation from source is what's called Rahman, which means divine compassion, which is also means womb.
Oh.
And if you break it down in sound codes, right? And in sacred language is, it can be broken into sound codes. Sound codes, when spoken, they emit, the sound vibrates at the same frequency as the thing that it names, right? So when you look at the sound codes of Rahman, it's Rah, ray of light, the H, which is the breath of spirit, the man is the fluid existence, and the N is manifestation, right? Rahman is ray of light through the breath of spirit into the fluid existence and into manifestation, into form. And this is the meaning of divine compassion, the divine attribute of compassion. It is the first emanation from consciousness. It's known as the womb through which all of creation flows, and it is the bridge between the worlds. This is the name, the same Arham from Rahim, which is another form of compassion and mercy. It's like the Rahman is like the sun of the light of compassion, and Rahim is like the reflection of compassion to the individual. The womb in the woman is Arham from Rahim, which is that portal. It is the bridge between the worlds. It carries that same vibration of the first emanation of God consciousness through which creation is born. And we as human beings are here to reflect the aspects of the divine in our physical material bodies. And this comes through the womb of the woman. And whether you are with child or not, whether you've ever given birth, or even if you've had your womb removed, the energy is still there. You still contain this within you, which is, how you come to bring life and sustain life within your body through this womb of compassion within you. And we, on the larger scale, are all one body contained within a womb of compassion. And so you contain that within you, where you can bring the whole universe into existence. You can sustain that life. And you'll still contain that energy in the acts of sexual intimacy, in sacred acts of sexual intimacy, where you can unite with another, and commune to return to your connection with source. So it's a very powerful thing that you have within you, and it is immensely sacred, beautiful and sacred. And that is what has been lost in our virgin and whore dichotomy. There is no honor in either one of those of the sacredness and the power and the beauty and the just exquisite nature of what you carry as a bridge between the worlds, an emanation of God consciousness to bring life into form. And so I maybe want to take a minute and just let yourself feel and be in awe. You can put your hands over your womb space and feel your presence in there. and just take some breaths and be in awe of the true, immense, sacred power and knowledge and wisdom that comes through this, that is contained within your body. And all of that knowledge and wisdom and sacredness is there and available to you to embody and to be. And I do believe that with the state of our humanity right now, I believe the patriarchy is being broken open.
Yes.
And it's ready to crumble. And it needs us to hold this space so that our humanity can come home to its place of healing. So for us women, I think this is really important right now, that we hold this, and we hold this within our beings, the truth, the knowledge of the sacredness of the feminine, the truth of that, so that our humanity, our whole of humanity, can return to this place and come into unity, its connection with truth and with the all that is.
Yes, and I just want to say my experience, if you don't mind. I mean, the more you talk about it, it is to me a place of creation and manifestation. But when and I've studied with you before, and I guess I've been led through this experience, but it was a little different for me today. Um, I work with bringing people to their third eye, or because it's more of a positive psychology, rewiring the brain, and it brings us to a neutral mind, or a space where we are in unity, where the dichotomy of swinging from pendulum to pendulum goes into a third energy of being with source.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the connection, or I teach and talk about the connection of the heart with the mind, because of the intellect and the heart. But when you brought in, or like I said, I've experienced this with you before, but today was different. When I brought in today with feeling the womb, it definitely felt like the same place that I'm working to help others to reach, in that neutral mind. I felt source, I felt creation, I felt the unity of the let's say those three places. But the thing that was a little different was when connecting for me. Everybody has their own experience of what you just led us through. Was this was the embodiment, and if you want to say empowerment, or whatever word you want to use, it was definitely really beneficial to me. So thank you very much. I hope that others, I'm not projecting my own experience and my own words, but uh, to think about that. And I know we've gone over time, but did you want to respond a little bit to what I just said at all?
I'll just say I think it's beautiful. I
Oh,
love it.
well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was great. So, how can people find you, learn more about you? I know you teach many different things, and I did. You did a workbook on the "While We Were Silent" book, and it was um, uh, bridging the gap.
Yes.
And
This one right here.
yes, and I took that series, and basically, you explained part of this process when I, did take that training with you. And I know people take it over and over again to get more heightened experience. But like I said, it was different for me today. So
Yeah.
again, just share how people can find more about you and what you offer. I highly can't say enough about you to the audience, that I've gained so much from our friendship, our being a colleague, and just sharing what you have to offer to me as well. So thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Anthusa. Yeah, and likewise. And so you can find me. Everything lives at joyfullylivingwellness.com. Joyfully Living. You can also go joyfullyliving.com. It goes to the same place, joyfullyliving.com. And So just visit that website. On there, you'll find links to my books under resources. Right now is where it is. Under resources, you'll find links to my books, Bridging the Gaps and While We Were Silent, the other one that Anthusa mentioned. This one is about healing from, backwards here, healing from sexual trauma. And then this one is about, this is a workbook, a healing step-by-step workbook that my programs are based on. I would love to have you in a program. So check my website for next programs coming up. I don't have one scheduled right now, but there will be one coming in the near future. So please check it out. joyfullylivingwellness.com. You can also join us on Sundays for a live healing circle, Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. U.S. Pacific Time. I do a live meditation and healing circle every Sunday. That's a very powerful healing experience as well. You can also, when you're on my website, schedule a one-on-one with me. I'd be happy to get on a phone with you and help you with whatever you're going through and see if maybe there's some work we can do together to help you get to where you want to be. So that's joyfullyliving.com.
Yes, thank you very much. And like I said, I've experienced what you just brought us through, exercise today, and it was more profound. I had more meaning that I resonated with, and so thanks for sharing the Adam and Eve perspective and just everything that you offered to our audience today. And this is Reverend Dr. Anthusa, Sollite Integrative Medicine. For more details on training programs and private healing sessions in holistic psychotherapy, log on to www.sollite.com. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I wish you all the very best. Stay safe and well. And it is Orthodox Easter today for those of you that are Orthodox, and I happen to have been raised partially in that venue. So happy Easter to all of you if you're watching today. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Happy Easter.